You won't believe this. The most powerful bank in the world didn't start with a government, a billionaire's trust fund, or a Silicon Valley startup. It began with one man, a man who, without social media, without the internet, without even a central bank to back him, could stop Wall Street from collapsing. Using nothing but his reputation and a locked room full of terrified bankers. No one saw it coming, but his name became a synonym for stability, control, and the kind of influence that makes presidents pick up the phone when you call. The truth revealed is that his story isn't just about money. It's about power moves, secret deals, and the hidden lessons that could change how you think about business forever. This is not the fairytale version of success. This is the raw, unfiltered reality of what it takes to build something so big, so untouchable, that even over a century later, it still controls more assets than any other bank on earth. What no one tells you is that behind the polished portraits and marble offices was a man who faced scandals, near failures, and moments when it almost didn't work. And here's why you need to hear this. Buried in his story are strategies you can apply right now, whether you're building a business, managing investments, or just trying to get ahead in your career, because the same principles that built his empire still work today, if you have the nerve to use them. Topic 1. Early life and family influence. From the moment he opened his eyes to the world, John Pierpont Morgan was surrounded by the kind of wealth and influence most people only read about in history books. Born in 1837 into the powerful Morgan banking family, he wasn't just given silver spoons, he was handed golden keys to the world of high finance. His father, Junius Spencer Morgan, was already a towering figure in international banking, moving money across continents like a chess master making his opening moves. You won't believe this, but even as a boy, JP was already absorbing lessons that would one day allow him to bend the financial world to his will. Imagine being a teenager and sitting at dinner while your father discusses million-dollar trade deals with European financiers. No bedtime stories here. These were real-life sagas of risk, profit, and power. Junius didn't believe in shielding his son from complexity. Instead, he opened the vault doors early, letting him witness negotiations that could make or break empires. It's the kind of hidden lesson most heirs squander. But JP wasn't most heirs. He listened, he learned. And deep down, he was already plotting his own moves. From a young age, travel became a part of his education, not for leisure but for exposure. London, Paris, and Rome weren't just postcard images. They were boardrooms and trading floors in disguise. You could say no one saw it coming, but these early trips planted the seeds of a worldview that would allow him to navigate global finance like few others. While most kids his age were playing marbles, he was watching merchants bargain in foreign tongues and bankers sealing deals with a handshake. The truth revealed here is that success at his level rarely starts with formal education. It begins with proximity to power. By shadowing his father, JP didn't just learn numbers, he learned psychology. He studied how powerful men carried themselves when they spoke and when they stayed silent. Even today, this is something you can apply. Find ways to put yourself in the rooms where decisions are made. Even if you start as the quiet observer, Junius also instilled in him the principle that money wasn't just a tool for personal gain, but a lever to shape industries and nations. It almost didn't work, though. JP was not a natural charmer. He was introverted, blunt, and physically awkward due to chronic health issues. Yet those very traits made him a keen observer, forcing him to process before he spoke. What no one tells you is that sometimes restraint is the sharpest weapon in a room full of loud voices. By the time most young men were still figuring out what to do with their lives, JP Morgan already knew the battlefield he would dominate. His upbringing had been a masterclass in influence and leverage, and though the stage was global, his role was still in rehearsal. But the moment was coming when he'd step into the spotlight, not just as his father's son, but as a force Wall Street couldn't ignore. Topic 2. Education and early careers. Morgan's education wasn't just about sitting in classrooms. It was a carefully crafted journey through the power centers of the 19th century. Starting in Boston, moving to Switzerland, and then on to Germany, he absorbed the discipline of American business, the precision of Swiss banking, and the intellectual rigor of European universities. You won't believe this, but one of his professors in Göttingen reportedly said Morgan had the focus of a man twice his age, a rare quality in a world still moving at the pace of horse-drawn carriages. His time in Europe did more than sharpen his intellect. It connected him to a network of elite thinkers and financiers. No one saw it coming, but those friendships would later become lifelines when he needed capital or insider information to outmaneuver rivals. Picture this: while most young men spent their evenings in smoky taverns, Morgan was in drawing rooms, debating international trade policy with diplomats and industrialists. That's the kind of hidden lesson you can still apply today. The quality of your circle can change the trajectory of your life. Returning to the United States, Morgan wasted no time entering the banking world of New York City. His first positions might have seemed modest on paper, but behind those office doors were deals that determined the future of railroads, shipping lines, and manufacturing plants. He observed everything: how contracts were written, how negotiations were staged, how patience could wear down even the toughest opponent. The truth revealed: banking wasn't about numbers. It was about trust, leverage, and timing. Early in his career, Morgan showed an instinct for spotting undervalued opportunities. He could walk into a struggling business, examine the ledgers, and see a pathway to profit where others saw only collapse. It almost didn't work the first few times. Risky calls nearly backfired, but he learned to balance boldness with caution. That's a lesson you can use in your own investments. Don't just follow the crowd. Look for assets that are solid at their core but temporarily out of favor. By the late 1850s, Morgan had developed a reputation as a young man who got things done. Colleagues said he worked with an intensity that made older partners take notice. What no one tells you is that he was already thinking beyond his immediate job description. He wanted to reshape how industries were financed, not just participate in deals. Even then, whispers in the financial district suggested he might be the next big thing, a dangerous label in a town that loves to build people up just to tear them down. And yet, beneath that rising profile, Morgan knew he was still untested. His father's name could open doors, but keeping them open would depend on his own ability to deliver results. He was about to get his chance, a chance that would pit his instincts against the chaos of an industrializing America where fortunes were made and lost in the blink of an eye. Topic 3. First big moves in finance. The late 1860s were a turning point for J.P. Morgan. America was rebuilding after the Civil War, industries were booming, and fortunes were being made almost overnight. You won't believe this, but Morgan's first truly bold moves came not from chasing trends, but from identifying the chaos others wanted to avoid. While many bankers were scrambling for quick profits, he was looking for long-term control, a strategy few understood at the time. One of his earliest major plays was investing in railroads. Back then, rail wasn't just transportation, it was the backbone of the American economy. Morgan saw that consolidating weaker lines into stronger networks could turn a money-losing venture into a cash-generating empire. No one saw it coming, but he began quietly acquiring stakes and influencing management, setting the stage for what would later be known as the Morganization of industries. He didn't stop there. Morgan began partnering with influential financiers like Anthony Drexel, forming relationships that would multiply his reach and resources. The hidden lesson here: power compounds when you partner strategically in business and in life. Think about it: whether you're building a small startup or managing your career, aligning with people whose skills complement yours can create leverage far greater than working alone. His ability to reorganize failing companies into profitable ones became legendary. The truth revealed is that he had a method: cut inefficiency, install strong leadership, and create stability. It almost didn't work in some early cases. Resistance from stubborn owners nearly derailed deals, but Morgan's persistence was unmatched. He believed that stability in business was as valuable as innovation, and he was willing to bulldoze through opposition to achieve it. By the early 1870s, Morgan was not just a participant in the financial markets, he was a force shaping them. Railroads, steel, manufacturing, his influence was everywhere. What no one tells you is that these moves weren't just about making money. They were about creating order in a market that was often chaotic and unpredictable. In his mind, chaos was an opportunity disguised as a crisis, but with every bold move came bigger risks. Morgan was beginning to understand that the higher you climb, the more enemies you make, and the more the public starts to watch your every step. Soon, his ambitions would expand beyond individual deals into something far more audacious, building an industrial empire that could stand unchallenged. Topic 4. Creating an industrial empire. By the late 19th century, J.P. Morgan wasn't just playing the game, he was rewriting the rules. You won't believe this, but his fingerprints were on some of the most powerful corporations in history. He financed and consolidated giants like General Electric, bringing together Thomas Edison's electric company and Charles Coffin's Thomson Houston to create a force that would light up the world. This wasn't luck, it was calculated dominance built on the belief that size brought stability. Then came U.S. Steel, a move so bold that no one saw it coming. Morgan orchestrated the merger of Andrew Carnegie's steel empire with several smaller competitors, creating the first billion-dollar corporation in American history. It almost didn't work. Negotiations with Carnegie were tense, with egos and billions of dollars hanging in the balance. But Morgan's ability to close the deal proved his unmatched skill in high-stakes diplomacy. The hidden lesson here: if you want to make a lasting impact, think beyond individual wins. Aim to build systems that can't be easily dismantled. For entrepreneurs today, that might mean creating an ecosystem of products or services that lock in customer loyalty. Much like Apple or Amazon, Morgan understood this decades before the concept had a name. He became the go-to figure for massive mergers and financial rescues. The truth revealed is that Morgan didn't just react to opportunities. He engineered them. He would identify industries ripe for consolidation, then quietly move the pieces into place until the market had no choice but to accept his new order. This level of control made him both respected and feared, a combination he wore like armor. In the public eye, Morgan was the man who could stabilize markets and industries with a single meeting in his library. Behind closed doors, he was strategic, sometimes ruthless, but always focused on the bigger picture. What no one tells you is that his approach wasn't just about money, it was about shaping the infrastructure of a rapidly modernizing America. And yet, as his empire expanded, so did the potential for disaster. The world was about to test whether even J.P. Morgan could stand against a full-blown financial panic. A storm was brewing on Wall Street, and soon, he would be called upon to do something no private citizen had ever done before. Topic 5. The 1907 financial crisis, saving Wall Street. In the autumn of 1907, Wall Street was on the edge of collapse. You won't believe this, but banks were failing one after another, the stock market was spiraling, and fear was spreading faster than the telegraph could carry the news. It almost didn't work for the entire financial system, and there was no Federal Reserve to step in. In that vacuum, one man was summoned to take control: J.P. Morgan. No one saw it coming, but Morgan transformed his personal library into the unofficial headquarters for saving the U.S. economy. Bankers, trust company executives, and industry leaders were summoned, not invited, to his home. The truth revealed is that he locked the doors, refusing to let anyone leave until they agreed on a coordinated plan to inject liquidity into the market. It wasn't negotiation, it was financial triage, and Morgan was the surgeon. The scene was intense, smoke-filled rooms, piles of financial statements on the tables, and Morgan pacing slowly, interrogating executives about their solvency. The hidden lesson here: in moments of crisis, decisive leadership often matters more than consensus. For modern leaders, whether in business or personal life, This means stepping forward with clarity when everyone else is frozen in fear. Within 48 hours, Morgan had organized a series of massive capital infusions to stabilize key institutions. He convinced stronger banks to support weaker ones, reassured the public, and even used his own fortune to prevent further collapses. It was a shocking story of one man effectively acting as America's central bank years before one existed. What no one tells you is how controversial this made him. Some saw him as a savior, others accused him of wielding too much power for a private citizen. But Morgan wasn't chasing applause. He was protecting a system he believed was essential for America's growth. The crisis passed, but the memory of those tense days would forever cement his place as the most powerful banker U.S. history. And yet, Morgan knew that his influence couldn't rest on ad hoc rescues alone. If he wanted to solidify his position for the future and pass on a lasting institution, he needed to create a formal, enduring structure that could outlive him. Topic 6. Founding J.P. Morgan & Co. By the early 1890s, J.P. Morgan understood that influence without structure was fragile. You won't believe this, but even after orchestrating some of the largest deals in history, he didn't yet have a fully established institution carrying his name. That changed when he founded J.P. Morgan & Co., a private banking firm designed to be both a fortress and a launchpad for global finance. No one saw it coming, but his vision wasn't just to run another bank, it was to create the bank, a place where the most important industrialists, politicians, and financiers could turn when the stakes were highest. The truth revealed is that Morgan's firm became a quiet powerhouse, handling transactions so large they often reshaped entire markets. It was here that billion-dollar deals were born over quiet conversations and discreet handshakes. Morgan built the company on 3 pillars: stability, discretion, and influence. The hidden lesson here: if you want people to trust you with their biggest risks, you must become a vault, not just for their money, but for their secrets. In modern terms, it's like running a tech company that holds not only your client's data, but also their competitive edge, and never letting a bite slip. Clients ranged from industrial giants to governments seeking financing for infrastructure and war efforts. It almost didn't work in the early days. Critics doubted whether a single firm could sustain such high-stakes, high-profile relationships without overextending. But Morgan's disciplined approach to risk made the difference. He didn't back every venture, only the ones where he could see a clear path to stability and profit. What no one tells you is how much of Morgan's influence came from his ability to not talk. He was notorious for his terse replies and ability to convey confidence without overselling. Deals were sometimes agreed upon in just a few words, or even a single nod. In an age obsessed with constant communication, that restraint made him stand out, but even the strongest fortresses face change. As Morgan's empire grew, it became clear that the firm would one day need to adapt to a new financial era, one that would stretch far beyond a single man's lifetime, and history was about to show how his creation would evolve into something even larger than he could have imagined. Topic 7. The evolution into J.P. Morgan Chase. After J.P. Morgan's death in 1913, many wondered if his empire would survive without the iron will of its founder. You won't believe this, but rather than fading, his firm began an evolution that would eventually create the largest bank in the world. It started with a series of strategic mergers, each one expanding its reach and adapting to a financial world that was becoming faster, more global, and more competitive. No one saw it coming when, decades later, J.P. Morgan & Co. merged with Chase Manhattan Bank, itself a powerhouse with deep roots in American finance. The truth revealed is that this union wasn't just about size. It was about combining two cultures of influence. Morgan brought the legacy of high-stakes investment banking, while Chase added a robust retail and corporate banking network. Together, they became a financial juggernaut. This transformation mirrors a hidden lesson. Survival in business isn't about preserving the past. It's about evolving without losing your core identity. For a small business owner today, that might mean adding digital services to a traditional storefront, or expanding into global markets while keeping the same customer-first values. Morgan's firm mastered that balance. Through the late 20th century, the newly formed entity expanded aggressively, moving into investment banking, asset management, and global markets. It almost didn't work during the volatile 1980s and 1990s, as risky ventures and economic downturns tested the bank's resilience. Yet each time, leadership doubled down on diversification, ensuring no single crisis could sink the ship. What no one tells you is that these mergers and expansions weren't random. They were calculated to place the bank in every major market on Earth, so that no matter where money moved, JP Morgan Chase would be part of the transaction. It was the kind of omnipresence the original JP Morgan could only have dreamed of, but as the bank's influence grew, so did the scale of challenges it would face. Globalization, technological disruption, and financial shocks were on the horizon. The question wasn't just whether the bank could grow bigger, but whether it could survive the storms of the modern era. Topic 8. Surviving modern crises. The 20th century closed and the 21st began. JP Morgan Chase faced a reality even the original Morgan couldn't have predicted: a world where financial crises could start in one country and ripple across the globe in hours. You won't believe this, but the bank not only survived these storms, it often came out stronger on the other side. During the Great Depression, its conservative lending practices kept it afloat while countless competitors collapsed. No one saw it coming, but decades later, in 2008, history would repeat itself, this time on a global scale. The truth revealed is that while other giants fell, JP Morgan Chase, under CEO Jamie Dimon, became a stabilizing force, acquiring failing institutions like Bear Stearns and Washington Mutual. Moves that looked risky at the time ultimately solidified its dominance. The hidden lesson here: crises are where true leadership shows. For entrepreneurs and investors today, it's a reminder that survival often depends less on avoiding risk and more on knowing when to act decisively while others hesitate. It almost didn't work in 2008. The acquisitions were massive gambles, but the long-term payoff was undeniable. Market volatility, tech disruption, regulatory battles, the bank faced them all. It invested heavily in digital infrastructure, transforming how clients moved money, traded stocks, and managed wealth. What no one tells you is that these behind-the-scenes upgrades were as crucial as the headline-making mergers. In the modern era, the ability to adapt to technology is just as important as financial muscle. Even during global shocks like the COVID-19 pandemic, JP Morgan Chase maintained stability, providing liquidity to markets and adapting to remote banking almost overnight. It wasn't just survival. It was an example of how to pivot under pressure without losing momentum, but surviving is only part of the story. The real question is, how do you take more than a century of dominance and turn it into a legacy that shapes the financial world for generations to come? That's where the story of JP Morgan's lasting impact truly begins. Topic 9. Legacy and impact. More than a century after his death, JP Morgan's shadow still looms over global finance. You won't believe this, but the strategies he pioneered, from consolidating industries to rescuing markets in crisis, are now standard playbooks for the world's most powerful financial institutions. His name has become shorthand for stability, influence, and the kind of quiet power that can move nations. No one saw it coming, but the very principles he used to build his empire have outlived the industries he first transformed. The truth revealed is that his legacy isn't just a bank. It's a mindset, a belief that finance, when wielded wisely, can be a force for shaping entire economies. Whether you agree with his methods or not, there's no denying that his fingerprints are on the foundations of modern capitalism. The hidden lesson here: real influence is built to last. If you're building a business or a personal brand today, don't just chase trends. Create systems, values, and networks that will endure beyond your lifetime. It almost didn't work for Morgan at times, but his commitment to stability over flash ensured that his impact wouldn't fade with the headlines. Even in the digital age, JP Morgan Chase, the institution born from his vision, remains the largest bank in the world by assets. What no one tells you is that this isn't just about money, it's about trust. For over a century, clients have trusted the name to safeguard fortunes, fund innovations, and weather storms, from industrial magnates in the Gilded Age to tech startups in Silicon Valley. The reach of Morgan's legacy crosses industries and generations. His approach still inspires leaders who understand that lasting success isn't just about making deals, it's about shaping the playing field itself. And yet, as the financial world continues to evolve, the question lingers: how much of this power still reflects the vision of the man himself? And how much has become something entirely new? That's a question only history and the next crisis can answer. So now you've seen the truth revealed: how one man's vision, discipline, and nerve built the biggest bank in the world and kept it standing through wars, depressions, and crises that almost ended it all. But here's the real question: what will you do with this knowledge? Will you just let it fade as another interesting story? Or will you use the hidden lessons to reshape your own future? No one tells you this, but the principles that made JP Morgan untouchable still work. If you have the courage to apply them, build networks that matter, act decisively in moments of crisis. Think long-term when everyone else is chasing quick wins. Because it almost didn't work for him too. But when it did, it changed everything. So, what's your next move? Will you keep following the crowd, or will you start building something that lasts beyond you? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to know if you're ready to think bigger, play smarter, and step into rooms most people don't even know exist. And if you want more shocking stories, more untold truths, and more strategies that could transform the way you see success, then hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on notifications, because the next episode might just be the one that changes how you play the game forever.